Alright guys, this is 8.7 day 2, where we are solving trinomials. So this is going to be the same as what we've done previously. The only last thing is that very last step where we solve and find out what the zeros are. So our first step here is to multiply our a and c. So remember, it's a is our first coefficient, b is our second coefficient, and c is our constant. So when I multiply a and c, I'm going to have 13. I'm going to have 12. Starting off great this morning, or this afternoon. And my factors of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. And so I need to get to 13, so the only way to do that is with that 1 and 12. So I'm going to rewrite this. I'm going to have 3n squared. It doesn't really matter which order we put these in. I know because this is positive, that my signs are the same, and this is positive, so they're both going to be plus. So plus 1n plus 12n plus 4 equals 0. So now at this point, this is where we are going to split and factor. So I'm going to factor this half, and then I am also going to factor this half. So in factoring my first half, the only thing I can pull out of here is an n. So I'm going to have n. That leaves me with 3n plus 1. And on my second one, I can pull out a 4. So if I pull out 4, it leaves me with n plus 1. And then now we need to find that greatest common factor. So I know that they both have a, what did I do here? Oh, an n, that leaves me with 3n. Oh, I didn't do this one right. Because 12 divided by 4 is going to be 3. So before, there's going to be a 3n. There we go. So the greatest common factor between the two of them is going to be that 3n plus 1. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. I have 3n plus 1. And then left over, I have n plus 4. And remember, this is equal to 0. So now I'm going to break these apart and solve. So I'm going to have 3n plus 1 equals 0, and n plus 4 equals 0. On this one, it's going to be 3n equals negative 1, which is going to give us n equals negative 1/3. And on this one, we're going to end up with n equals negative 4. I'm not going to work through the steps on solving those equations because at this point in the year, you guys should be able to do that with no problem. All right, looking at number 2. When we do this one, again, multiplying my a and my c is going to give me 12 again. So I'm going to just look over here at these factors. And I have to get to 8. So the only way I can get to 8 is using 2 and 6. Again, everything's plus, so I know I'm going to be adding here. So I'm going to keep that 4r squared plus 2r plus 6r plus 3 equals 0. And so now if I go and divide and conquer on this, my first half, I can pull a 2r out. It leaves me with 2r plus 1. On the second one, switch colors here. I can pull out a 3. So if I pull out a 3, I'm going to be left with 2r plus 1. And so rewriting this with my greatest common factor, I'm going to have 2r plus 1 times 2r plus 3. So now to separate and solve, this is still equal to 0. So 2r plus 1 equals 0, and 2r plus 3 equals 0. So here I'm going to have 2r equals negative 1, which is going to give me r equals negative 1/2. And on this one I have 2r equals negative 3, which is going to give me r equals negative 3/2. Again, you can change these to a decimal if you want, but it's just as easy just to write it out and be done and not have to do anything else with it. All right, looking at number 3. So again, we're multiplying our a and c. So 5 times 4 is going to give me 20. My factors of 20, I have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. The only way to get to 8 on here is to use the 2 and 10. So because my 4 is negative, I'm going to have one of each here. So rewriting this, I have 5a squared, and then I know I'm going to have a negative. I know I'm going to have a plus, so I'll fill in the blanks in just a moment. And then I still have this minus 4 equals 0. So to get a negative 8, I know that my greater factor has to be the negative. Well, in this case, my greater factor is 10, so minus 10a and plus 2a. And so when we do this, again, we're going to split and factor. So 5a squared minus 10a, my greatest common factor is going to be a 5a, which leaves me with just a minus 2. And on my other one, if I factor out a 2, I'm going to be left with a minus 2. And then I still have my equals 0. And so my greatest common factor, I have a minus 2 times 5a plus 2. So now going through and solving, if I set this up, a minus 2 equals 0, that's going to give me a equals 2. And 5a plus 2 equals 0. 5a is going to equal negative 2, so that means a is going to be negative 2 over 5. Looking at number 4, first thing I have to do is move this 14, so I'm going to have 3c squared plus 19c plus, or minus 14. We have to move that 14, so minus 14 equals 0. So now multiplying 3 and 14, that is going to give me a 42 for my my product, and we're going to have 1 and 42, 2 and 21, 3 and 14, let's see here, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right, and we need to get to 19. So to be able to get to 19, we're going to use our 2 and 21. We know because that 14 is negative that we have to have one positive, one negative. So to be able to get to a positive 19, it means my bigger one has to be positive. So 3c squared plus 21c minus 2c minus 14 equals 0. All right, so now again, we're going to go through here and we are going to factor. Sorry if you're hearing the screaming in the halls. We've got teams trying out there, or practicing, I guess. So we're going to split this up this way. So on my first one, I can pull out a 3c. So 3c comes out. I'm left with c plus, and 21 divided by 3 is 7. And on my second one, because both of these are negative, I'm going to pull a negative out, and I'm going to pull a negative 2, which is going to leave me with c plus 7. So now again, my greatest common factor here is going to be c plus 7. So c plus 7 times 3c minus 2. And this is equal to 0. So now when I solve this, I have c plus 7 equals 0. So c is going to be negative 7. And on this one, 3c minus 2 equals 0. So that means 3c equals 2. So c is going to equal 2 over 3. All right, looking at number 5, again, we have to move this over. So if I write it in standard form after moving it, I have 8z, and I always put a line in my z so we can tell the difference between them in 2's. 8z squared plus 6z plus 1 equals 0. So when I multiply my a and my c, I get 8. Factors are 1, 8, 2, and 4. And so to get to 6, I have to use the 2 and 4. So I'm going to keep 8z squared. They're all positive, so plus 2z plus 4z, and I need plus 1 equals 0. So again, when I go to divide and conquer, I'm going to do here and here. So my greatest common factor between 8z squared and 2z is going to be 2z, which is going to leave me with 4z plus 1. And on the other side, the only thing I can factor out is a 1. So I'm going to pull a 1 out, and I'm left with 4z plus 1. So now my greatest common factor between these is that 4z plus 1. So 4z plus 1 times, I have 2z plus 1 equals 0. So again, divide and conquer. 4z plus 1 equals 0, and 2z plus 1 equals 0. So this is going to be 4z equals negative 1, and 2z equals negative 1. And so this one we have z equals negative 1 over 4, and this one z equals negative 1 over 2. All right, moving on to, and I guess you couldn't see that, but there's your answer on that. Number 6, again, multiplying my a and my c is going to give me a 72. So I have 1 and 72, 2 and 36, 3 and 24. Is that right? Yeah, 2, 4, 6, 12, yeah. 4 and 13. 5 won't work. 6 and 12. 7, 8, and 9. All right, there we go. And to get to 14, the only way to get to 14 on this one is, let me see what we got going on here. Did I mess up on my numbers? So let me double check this, make sure I've got the right factors here. So I have 72 divided by 4 is 18. There's where we went. So this should be an 18. Okay. So to get to 14, there's my factors that I'm going to use. So rewriting this, I have 12d squared. It's all, well, we have a negative, so we have to have one positive, one negative. So my positive needs to be the bigger one because my b is positive. So I'm going to have plus 18d minus 4d minus 6 equals 0. So again, when I go to divide and conquer, I'm going to do this one and this one. So when I pull this out, my biggest number I can pull out is a 6 and a d, which leaves me with 2d plus 3. On this one, I'm going to pull a negative 2, which is going to leave me, with a 2d plus 2. So now rewriting this with my greatest common factor, that 2d plus 3, that's a 3, not a 2, sorry. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is a positive 3. So 2d plus 3, and then I'm left with 6d minus 2 equals 0. So 2d plus 3 equals 0, and 6d minus 2 equals 0. So when I go to solve this, 2d equals negative 3, so that means d equals negative 3 over 2. And if I have 6d equals 2, so I'm going to have d equals 2 over 6. You can also write that as 1 over 3. Either one is okay. All right, moving on to the back side. Number 7, again, we're still solving by factoring, so I got to move that 16. So 3x squared minus 26x plus 16 equals 0. When I multiply 3 and 16, not one I can do in my head, 3 times 16 is going to give me 48. So 48 factors, I have 1 and 48, 2 and 24, 3 and 16, 4 and 12, 5, 6, and 8. All right. So now to get to 26, that's very simple. This problem also looks kind of familiar from our notes earlier today, so if you have those handy, you might already have the answer for this. So I have 3x squared. I have a positive but a negative, so because this is positive, my signs in the middle need to be the same, but they're both going to have to be negative because that's negative. So that means I need to have a minus 24x minus 2x plus 16 equals 0. So again, when I go to divide and conquer to factor this, I'm going to do my first two terms and my second two terms. So if I factor out a 3x, I'm going to be left with x minus 8. On this one, I'm going to factor a negative 2, so I'm going to pull a negative 2 out, and I'm going to be left with x minus 8. I switched colors there again, but you guys get the picture. It's hard to see that green. All right, so now rewriting this with my greatest common factor, I have x minus 8 times 3x minus 2. So now if we equal 0, so if we're solving x minus 8 equals 0, that means x is going to equal 8 on this one. And over here, 3x minus 2 equals 0, so 3x equals 2. So x is going to equal 2 over 3. Looking at number 8, again, I have to move that c term over, so I'm going to have 2x squared minus 13x plus 15 equals 0. So multiplying my a and c is going to give me a 30. So for the factors of that, I have 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 4, 4 doesn't work. 4 won't work, but 5 will. 5 and 6. So to get to 13, I have to use the 3 and the 10. So again, this is positive, this is negative. So my signs have to be the same because of this. They both have to be negative because of this. So now I'm going to rewrite 2x squared because they're both negative. It doesn't matter what order we're in. So I'm going to do minus 10x minus 3x plus 15 equals 0. So again, here when we split, I'm going to just change some colors around. So when we split here, if I do my first two and my second two, so I can factor out from here at 2x. So 2x comes out, leaves me with x minus 5. On this one, because this is negative, my 3x, this is a negative 3x, I'm going to pull a negative 3 out, and it's going to leave me an x plus 5. Or negative 5, sorry, because I know a positive 15 divided by a negative 3 is going to give me a negative 5. So now, pull out my greatest common factor from there is x minus 5, and I have 2x minus 3, and we're equal to 0. So we set this up again, x minus 5 equals 0, so x equals 5, and 2x minus 3 equals 0, so 2x is going to equal positive 3, so x is going to equal 3 over 2. A lot of 3 over 2s for our answers this week. All right, looking at number 9. So number 9 is taking us kind of another step forward. We have to distribute before we can do anything else, and we have to move. So to do that, I'm going to distribute. 3x times x is going to give me 3x squared, and x times negative 5 is negative 5x. And I'm going to go ahead and move this 2 over in the process. So that's going to give me that negative 2. So I'm left with equals 0. 3 times 2 is going to give me 6 for my factors. So my options here, I have 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. Well, both of these, it looks like, can get me to 5. But now I got to take a look at if I have one positive, one negative, because that's the only way I can get a negative here. So to have one negative and one positive and still get me to 5, I have to use the 1 and 6. There's no way that negative 3 plus 2 will give me negative 5, or negative 2 plus 3 will give me negative 5. The only possible option is the 1 and 6. So doing that, I have 3x squared. And because this is negative, that means my greater factor needs to be negative. So it's minus 6x plus 1x minus 2 equals 0. So again, in this, we are going to split and factor. So I have my first two terms, I have my second two terms. So on this first one, I can do 3x can come out and leaves me with x minus 2. On my second one, I can pull just a 1 out, and it leaves me with x minus 2. So now my greatest common factor of these is that x minus 2, and I have 3x plus 1 left over equals 0. So with x minus 2 equals 0, I know that x is going to equal 2. I'm going to take this 3x plus 1 over here, so 3x plus 1 equals 0. So that is going to leave me with 3x equals negative 1, which is going to give me x equals negative 1/3 for my answer. So there's my two answers, x equals 2, x equals negative 1/3. All right, looking at number 10, same steps. We have to distribute and we have to move. So 4x times x is going to be 4x squared. X times negative 19 is negative 19x. Positive 30, moving it to the other side gives me a negative 30 equals 0. So now multiplying, I'm going to use this corner, this side over here for my factors. 30 and 4 is going to give me 120. This is going to be a long one, but I'm going to have 1 and 120, 2 and 60, 3 and 40, 4 and 30, 5 and, what does 5 go into there? 2, 20, no, I can't think. 120 divided by 5 gives me 24. There we go. 24. 6 goes in 20 times. 7 doesn't. 8. I don't think so, but we'll double check it. Nope, not that. 8 divided by 8. Here we go. Goodness gracious. 8 equals 15, so 8 does. 9 does not. 10 and 12. So that's not as bad as I thought. All right, so I have to get to 19. So when I start looking through this, figure out how I'm going to get to 19, the only possible way to get to 19 is this right here, because I know that 24 minus 5 is 19. So if I rewrite this, 4x squared minus, now we have to have one of each because my c is negative, and my greater one needs to be negative, so my greater one here is 24, so minus 24x plus 5x minus 30 equals 0. So when I go to factor these out, I'm going to factor here and factor here. So out of here, I can pull a 4x, which leaves me with x minus 6. On this side, I can factor out a 5, which leaves me with x minus 6. So again, when I go to write this, I'm going to have x minus 6 times 4x plus 5 equals 0. X minus 6 equals 0, so x is going to equal positive 6. And on this one, 4x plus 5 equals 0. This is going to come up to be x equals negative 5 over 4. All right, so looking at our last one, these are always fun. I always try to remember the formula for area of rectangles. So we have our length times our width equals our area. So with this, I'm going to plug in what I know. So I know that my length, I'm going to do, this is my length, so I'm going to have x times my width. So I have x plus 3 equals my area, it tells me right up here, is 88. So now we need to distribute and move. So x times x is x squared. X times 3 is 3x. And then that's going to be a negative 88 once I move that over. So equals 0. So now on this one, because I have a my a is equal to 1, I don't have to do any multiplication. Here I can just factor. So I need to think of my factors of 88. So I have, that's 88 over here. I'm going to have 1 and 88, 2 and 44, 3 won't work, 4 and 22, 5 won't work, 6 I don't think will work, but we'll find out. 88 divided by 6, nope. 7 won't work, 8 will, 8 and 11, 9 won't work, 10 won't work, and we're already back at 11. All right, so I'm going to use 8 and 11 here, which they come up to 3, so that works. So remember my c is negative, so since that is negative, I need to have one of each when I factor this. So we're going to do this right here. And I'm going to split my x's. And so now, because 1 is negative and 1 is positive, this is still equal to 0. I look at these factors. My 3 is positive, so my greater factor needs to be positive as well. So that's that 11. So the 11 needs to be positive, and my 8 needs to be the negative. So now when we set this equal to 0, we have x minus 8 equals 0. And 11 plus, or x plus 11, sorry. X plus 11 equals 0. So when I solve this one, I get x equals 8. This one is x equals negative 11. Well, we know that we cannot have a side that is negative. We talked about that in class. If you're using a tape measure and you go to, or a ruler, and you go to measure this, you cannot get a negative measurement. It's not possible. So because of that, we can ignore this answer, and we know that the x is going to be equal to 8. So with that, our length here is going to be equal to 8, and our width here is going to be 8 plus 3, which is going to give us 11 for our answers. All right, there you have it, today's homework. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and we will see you guys in class next time.